How you doing, guys and girls? Welcome back to the channel. Again, got something a little bit different for you today. We're going to be going through foundational exercises for first-time lifters and beginner lifters. I often find when people come into the gym for the first time, they're so focused on the aesthetics of building bigger biceps, bigger triceps, working on their quads, their calves, getting chiseled chest, getting chiseled abs, that actually they hop straight into a lot of isolation exercises. So isolation would usually be something like a bicep curl, where I only have movement at one joint, which is my elbow here, which is just isolating my bicep, as opposed to maybe something like a pull-up, where I have movement at both the shoulder joint and also at the elbow joint too, which is also going to elicit a bicep response, but it is also going to elicit a lot more response from my back, latissimus dorsi, as well as rhomboids for scapular stabilization, lower trapezius as well. So I thought I'd bring you guys and girls this video today in order to help you progress with both upper body and lower body lifts. So some of the lifts that we are going to be covering today is going to be your press up, which is going to carry across into things like bench press. We're also going to be working on dips as well. For the back, we're going to be working on your pull-ups. And for lower body, we're going to be focusing on probably the two biggest lifts, which is going to be your squat and also your deadlift. So without further ado, ladies and gents, let's hop into some of these exercises and really start to break down what you should be doing, what you should be looking for, and how you should be performing them yourself. So let's get started.
So with our press up, we are ensuring that our hands are around about shoulder width apart, with our hands underneath our shoulders, not too far forward and not too far back. We're also ensuring that we are creating tension throughout the quadriceps, the glutes, and the core. This means that we're not wasting any energy by dipping or swaying the lower back and having to engage the core with every single repetition. Keep everything nice and tight, so we are very simply just pivoting from the toes. From here, just softening the elbows and bringing the body until we're a couple of inches off of the ground before then driving through the palms of the hands all the way up to the top lockout position. If you can't quite perform these, then perhaps you want to try something like a kneeling press up, a box press up, or a standing press up. What we are doing with all three of these variants or regressions is ensuring that we still have those tension throughout the quadriceps, glutes, and core, and this time we're just working with less of our own body weight. All three of these variants allow us to work with a percentage of our body weight rather than the full thing. So as we progress and get stronger, we can then tend to add more body weight or reduce the angle that we are working at so we can get closer to that full press up progression. This standing bar press up is fantastic for new beginner lifters because you can gradually decrease the angle, meaning that we can work with more of our body weight over time until we can perform a full press up all the way from toes. And next up we have our tricep dips. Here I'm trying to ensure that I'm keeping my elbows relatively close in, with my grip being shoulder width apart, maybe ever so slightly wider. I'm trying to ensure that the elbows don't flare out, as this is going to put a lot of undue tension into the shoulder joint. I'm also ensuring that the shoulders don't rotate and sit forward. Instead, I'm trying to engage a little bit more of my upper back and sit my shoulders back. This way I can get a little bit more of a chest engagement, as well as really focusing on those primary triceps to move my body weight. Now, if you can't quite do a full tricep dip, using a resistance band is a fantastic way to negate some of that body weight. With a resistance band, you're going to get the most amount of tension or aid at the bottom range of motion, which conveniently is going to be the weakest portion for you because you're working without momentum and you're also in a fully elongated position. From there, you drive up. As the resistance band slacks off, you get to work with more of your own body weight, allowing you to get used to working with that weight. Now, if you don't want to use a resistance band for your knees, this is a nifty little trick to help you to push a little bit easier with your tricep dips. Taking a small resistance band, placing it around the elbows, then works as a self-made slingshot, allowing you to push out the hole with lots of force and take you all the way to the top range. The assisted dip machine is a fantastic way for new beginners to get used to working with their own body weight in dips, as we can choose just how much assistance we have on the machine, making the exercise easier or harder for us. I love this machine because it really allows you to clean up your technique and make sure you are comfortable through the entire range of motion before progressing forward and taking a little bit more of the weight off, so you are forced to then work with your own body weight. And now we come to the pull-up. So with the pull-up, what I want to ensure is that before I begin the motion, I am setting my shoulders down. From that dead hang position, it's very easy for the shoulders to be up by the ears. Now what I want to do is I consciously want to engage my mid and lower trapezius and my rhomboids to bring my shoulder blades back and down into their socket. This will elevate my chest and give me a more powerful position to begin my movement in. From there, I drive my elbows to the ground and bring my chin just above the bar, slowly lowering down and returning to my beginning position. Now perhaps you can't do that. Why not use a resistance band once again? Wrapping the resistance band around the bar and underneath one of your knees. This again is going to help you the most from the bottom range of motion and the least when you are at the top. So again, we are getting the most bang for our buck when we are at our weakest and having to work with the most amount of our body weight when we are at our strongest. If that isn't your cup of tea, then why not come back to that assistance machine again? Really take it back to basics, make sure the weight is nice and light for you, and clean up that technique as much as physically possible. Focus very, very tightly on engaging that middle back to elevate the chest, and really try and concentrate on driving the elbows down and lifting the chest up towards the bar. This is going to give us that really nice lat contraction and make us nice and strong so we can progress through into our resistance band and then hopefully all the way to our fully fledged chin up. So now looking at our squat and focusing on the lower body, the first thing that we want to look at with this is our bar positioning. So with our hands, we want to use the null as a reference. I tend to use the ring just to the right of that image there, which you'll see in a second, as my reference. Now with this ring, you can use any positioning you want depending upon what your shoulder mobility is. The closer you're going to be in, the better your shoulder mobility needs to be. The further out you go is if your shoulder mobility isn't very good, and you'll actually see a lot of people even hold just by the collars there if perhaps the shoulder mobility isn't very good. So if I'm going to go slightly more high bar, so the bar sitting higher up on my trapezius, I tend to come a little bit wider so it sits nice and high on top of the neck. This is really personal preference. Now I myself tend to be more of a low or mid bar squatter, so you'll now see here I sit the bar more on my rear deltoids and mid trapezius, and this really is just personal preference. Now when I come into my squat, I really want to focus on a few things. Number one is as I lower down, my hips are pushing backwards and my knees are driving apart. Now my knee drive apart is going to allow my pelvis to lower down underneath my shoulders. What you will realize here is with the outside of the bar, I want to try and keep it moving in a straight line up and down. If I have any movement forwards or backwards, this is going to strain my center of gravity and it's going to make the movement a lot harder. And it's something that you'll see with a lot of beginners when it comes to the squat, is that they're very uncomfortable under the bar and the bar will move backwards and forwards a lot and they're going to waste a lot of energy trying to counteract this movement the entire time. So if the full squat is maybe a little bit too much, you can regress down to a goblet squat. So I'm just sitting down onto a chair here, so I'm ensuring that I'm hitting depth every single time. You'll notice I'm trying to keep the chest elevated, the shoulders slightly back, and again I'm focusing on driving those knees nice and wide apart to allow my hips to settle through. So if you can't do this, just take the weight away. Focus on just working with your body weight, still making sure that you're getting down to that depth. And what I will say is that you want to ensure that you have a platform that is going to allow you to sit at 90 degrees or maybe ever so slightly underneath. And lastly, we look at our deadlift. Now, when it comes to deadlifting, there are three main stances. Your first is the conventional stance, quite tight, Then you go into a slightly wider stance known as froggy, where the hands come between the thighs. And last but not least, you have the super wide sumo stance. Each of these are completely personal preference and depends upon your range of motion and mobility through your hips, hamstrings, and how tight your lower back might be. You'll find with the sumo, you don't actually have to travel quite as far as a conventional, but the muscles you will engage are going to be ever so slightly different. Now, I myself am now opting for more of a conventional stance, just because I feel more comfortable in this position now and have really tried to hone in my technique over the past few years. With the conventional stance, what I want to ensure is before I begin my movement is that I have a good hold on the bar with my hands around about shoulder width apart. You want to ensure that the hands sit outside of the knees and aren't forcing your knees to collapse in, but allowing your knees a bit of room to push ever so slightly out and engage a little bit more of the glutes. From this position, I want to try and set my shoulder blades back and down to engage my latissimus dorsi and really solidify the whole of my upper back. This then means that when I grasp onto the bar, really all I have to do is press the floor away from me, much like I'm doing a leg press, and because my back is engaged and tight, it means the bar will stay nice and close to my body and I will be able to exert a maximum amount of force through the floor to lift the bar up and out of the hole. You'll notice that I do from time to time twist my elbows in. This is also going to help me to engage my upper back too, and is a cue I like to use personally before I deadlift to ensure I keep that tension in my upper back the entire time. If perhaps you can't deadlift with an entire bar, a nice regression for you to practice is going to be to use a kettlebell. Now all I'm going to do is ensure that the kettlebell handle sits in line with the arches of my feet, so I'm keeping it nice and close to the center line of my body. Here I will do the exact same thing that I do with a bar, and you will notice straight away how you can now notice my latissimus dorsi and upper back engage before I perform the lift. Again, this is practicing solidifying the upper back, so then eventually when I progress through my weights up until a point I'm hitting around about 30 kilograms, so I can comfortably move on to an Olympic bar with maybe some bumper plates, I have the exact technique that I need to excel and progress through the motion, and then start adding weight onto the bar to start maybe pushing towards some more personal bests, or maybe even a competition goal or weight that you want to achieve.
Okay guys, so there you have it. We have gone through our press ups, our dips, our pull-ups, our squat, and also our deadlift today. Now, you will realize that I've used a variety of different methods with this progressive training, using those things like the resistance bands that we've spoken about, the assisted machines, and also adapting those bodyweight exercises to allow for us to do more repetitions and let our body get used to and adapt to the new stresses that we're putting onto ourselves in order to then progress up to the full-scale version of the exercise itself. Now, when you first come into the gym, don't worry about trying to rush and get on to doing 100 kilo squats or 200 kilo deadlifts or anything crazy. Start off incredibly basic, create a foundation for your lifts. All of these core, functional, and multi-joint lifts are all going to help you massively when it comes back round to then going into the more aesthetic lifts. Things like our bicep curls, our tricep extensions, our leg extensions, things like this, because you will have a greater understanding of your body, you will have a greater understanding and mind-muscle connection with your certain muscle groups, and you are also going to be stronger throughout your whole body. So let's say I come into the gym and I just work on leg extension, leg curl, things like this for a certain amount of time before I even attempt to do a squat. By the time I come round to doing a squat, I may have created myself a muscular imbalance. I won't necessarily have the confidence or the balance to perform these exercises as well as I could. And also my muscle contractility might be different and my muscle balance might be different. If maybe I'm training my hamstrings more than my quadriceps or vice versa, I might be tighter through certain ranges of motion, which is actually going to contribute to being a huge limiting factor in how well I can squat, the range of motion I get, whether I have a butt wink or not, which we'll get onto on another day, it's a completely different topic, and how much force I can produce. So guys and girls, I hope you took a lot away from this video. Please, please, please do share it around. If you know anyone that is getting into the gym, This information is absolutely paramount to progression. And I wish that I had someone to sit me down at the age of 13 when I first started lifting to show me all of this and actually speak to me about just how important these things are, because in actual fact, if I was to work on those things a lot more back then and not work on things like my bicep curls, my lateral raises for big delts, I would actually have a much better squat, a much better deadlift, which would then carry across into my strongman training, and I would be even further ahead. Regardless of that, guys and girls, if you did like the video, please give it a huge thumbs up. If you didn't, then give it a thumbs down. Please share it around, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please be sure to sub to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know when I post. And if you have any tips, tricks, and advice that you think that newcomers into the gym should know and utilize into their training, then please do share them below, share them around, and share your wealth of knowledge. Apart from that, guys and girls, be safe, love each other, have lots and lots of fun, and I will see you guys and girls on the next one.